Welcome to this video, which is to provide guidance on getting up and running with the document processing system in ACR. In this video, we'll focus on setting a scanner up on your local Wi-Fi network and installing the relevant software to configure the scanner. For the purpose of the demonstration, we have selected to use a Fujitsu ScanSnap IX1600, which we have identified works well for our own use with the DPS of ACR Business Systems. However, we encourage you to choose a scanner that you feel will work best in your business's environment. And as such, this video is not an endorsement for a particular scanner, the ScanSnap included. Moving on, in this image we can see the unboxed scanner, and in the upcoming slides we'll take a look at the other components that came with it and that are required for setup. Here we have the AC adapter and its attached cable, the end of which plugs into the input of the scanner for power. Additionally, the adapter itself has an empty input for connecting to the separate power cable which we see here. The power cable has a head which can be plugged into a power outlet at the wall, for example, and the other end of the cable is what you would attach to the power adapter in the previous slide. Here you can see that we are doing just that, with the end result that we now have one long cable ready to plug into the back of the unit. Just like so, we can plug it in and then we're ready to go and plug the wall socket into the wall and power on. Now we're looking back at our closed scanner, which has power. This scanner, like many, has a cover that when you lift it up reveals a display screen, in this case a touch screen. The device refers to this as the ADF paper chute. Upon lifting the flap of the scanner, it will boot up and eventually present us with setup screens. As we proceed with the setup of this scanner, you'll note that it employs a blue next or back button as a means for navigating through the process as selections are made. So let's select English, hit next and move on. At this point, we'll see that the scanner is doing a little bit of thinking before it presents us with the warranty detail. Should you wish to review that, you can of course scan in the QR code on your phone and go through to that, or just follow the link by typing that into your browser. But we'll continue to move on at this point with the setup of the scanner. So the next thing that we need to do is choose a startup mode for when we open the cover. And in our case, we have chosen fast mode. This means when we open the cover, it is going to be ready for scanning a bit of paper without any delay whatsoever. Hitting the next button in the top right will continue on our way. On this screen, we are prompted to choose a connection method for the scanner, and there's three distinct methods, those being USB, Wi-Fi, and direct connection. For the purpose of our setup in this scenario for use with the ACR document processing system, we want the scanner to be free from connection with any other device, physical connection that is, yet still support the ability to scan a document that is then safely deposited to its destination in the cloud, and this can be achieved by selecting the Wi-Fi option. It's worth noting that later in the video, we'll demonstrate steps regarding connectivity to the cloud. Since we have the Wi-Fi option selected here already, let's hit the next button and move on. This screen just tells us clearly what we're wanting to do, which is connect to an access point. In your business or home environment, you might understand an access point as being your wireless router or box that all your Wi-Fi enabled devices connect to. We'll hit next now. Here, it is asking how we'd like to choose an access point, and we'll choose the option to select an access point, then proceed on to the next setup. At this point, the scanner will list all the Wi-Fi networks that the device can pick up, whereupon you'd select the one that you recognize and would like to use. In our case, we've selected the network ACR Web Demo, which places a blue tick beside the entry before we proceed with the next button. On this screen, it will ask us to set the connection information, and like many devices, the scanner can ascertain most of that automatically, with the exception of the security key, which you would probably understand as the Wi-Fi password. To set the Wi-Fi password on this scanner, select the little keyboard icon we see in the bottom right of the screen, and this presents us with a password entry screen like so. On the entry screen, by default, keystrokes are displayed to give you visibility of the password. I've turned that off in this demo and entered the password. Once you've entered your password, press the OK button in the bottom right. You're now back on the previous screen and you're able to proceed with connecting to the Wi-Fi network by pressing the next button, and that's connecting to the Wi-Fi network, I should say. So it will now try and connect, and we can see again it's doing a little bit of thinking there, and presuming we've entered the correct details, it should shortly thereafter identify that it's connected successfully to the network. Once successfully connected, we can hit the complete button up at the top right, as there's nothing for us to do at this point. The next screen indicates that the setup is indeed complete and advises that we should install software on a computer or mobile device and establish a connection to the scanner. Either note down the URL displayed for the scansnap.com website or follow the link associated with the QR code shown, after which you can then click the OK button to continue. We're now on the final screen, and on this screen it just shows us some basic information about the scanner on the Wi-Fi network, being its name and IP address on that local network. At this point of the video, we now have the scanner set up on our Wi-Fi network and ready to go and move on to provide an overview of the further steps which are required so that you can scan documents and have them sent out to the cloud. This will be done from a Windows machine that, whilst not connected physically to the scanner, is however on the same Wi-Fi network. Okay, so now we're going to install the ScanSnap Home software. In a browser, we'll go to the web URL that we had noted down earlier on when we were installing and setting up the actual ScanSnap. We've gone to there and we can see that there is an installer for Windows that we need to download. So we're going to click on Download Installer, and it will prompt us with an end user license agreement, which we'll need to agree to before we can continue with the download. Now we can see that installer downloading at the top of the screen, and it has finished downloading the installer. So let's go run it. The first thing that will happen when this installer kicks off is it will actually then attempt to download the various components it needs to install the ScanSnap Home software. Shortly that should appear. We just need to sit tight just for a moment. We're prompted if we want to install it and let it make changes, so we'll say yes to that. And not much longer, and we should then start receiving the download installer prompts. Here we go. So at this stage it's just telling us that it's going to install ScanSnap Home onto the computer, which we can then use for configuring the scanner. We will go with a typical setup, so that's already ticked, so we'll just hit next so we can then continue along. It tells us about what it's installing and where, and at this point we can click install, so it will kick off that process. We can see now that it is downloading the install files, like I mentioned earlier. At this point, you have the opportunity to go create a ScanSnap account. You can see a registration button just down there that I'm hovering over. You will need an account at a later stage when you're configuring the ScanSnap to be able to scan out to the cloud, to Google Drive. Okay, so the download's almost done and we're ready to install. This process will kick off. Both the download and the install can take a little while. On this machine, they should tick over fairly quickly for us. You can see we're 95% of the way there. We're actually done now. So 100% complete. It's got all the files it needs for installing. And that means now that we can just go through the setup phase of the ScanSnap Home software, where it will be able to then identify the scanner on our local network. That won't be much longer. Just a little bit more thinking. Okay, at this point we're ready to go, and it says what type of model scanner do we have. In this case it's got the IX1600 already selected and highlighted, so we can just go straight down to Start Setup because that's our model that we're dealing with here. Now it's saying how do we want to connect to the ScanSnap, or more to the point, telling us to connect it to our computer for this process. We don't want or need to be doing that because we already have the ScanSnap on our Wi-Fi network. So we say, if you cannot connect the USB cable to the computer, refer to this link. We just click on that, and that will take us through to this next screen where it says the ScanSnap will be connected to a wireless access point. Again, we already have that done earlier in the video. It's on our Wi-Fi network, so we just need to hit next so we can then locate it on the network and be on our way. Hitting next now, and it's looking for the scanner on the Wi-Fi network. Just to be clear, we need to make sure that your computer and the scanner are on the same Wi-Fi network so they can find each other. If you find that it can't pick it up, retry it, but also make sure you are on the same Wi-Fi network as where you set up your scanner. Here we found the IX1600 that we set up earlier on the network. We'll hit next and continue on the way. At this point, it's just preparing the computer and the scanner up so that they can just talk during this configuration phase that we're going to be going through to set up the scanner to talk to the cloud. This takes a short while. Depending on your computer, it might be 30 seconds, it could be a minute. You just need to be patient at this point. Okay, so it's been able to establish a connection over the Wi-Fi network between this computer and the scanner. So we can hit next now and move on to the following screen. Just waiting for it to move along now. Here we go. Okay, so it says it's ready to use. At this point, we could actually put a piece of paper in and scan it as it's showing on the screen there, but it would scan to our computer because we haven't got to the point of having it be set up to scan to the cloud. So here we will close off the ScanSnap Home setup, and once that's done, we'll actually then just go start up the ScanSnap Home software, because that's how we can do the very final steps to ensure we scan to the cloud. Okay, so at this point we've installed the ScanSnap Home software, and we'll now continue with the setup. So what we'll do at this point is open the ScanSnap Home software. Okay, so there's two parts of what we need to do now. One is log into our ScanSnap account that we would have already set up prior to doing this, and if you haven't, you can do it during the process. And then once logged into that, we'll be able to connect it up to our Google account so that we can scan documents straight up to our Google Drive account. So let's go first to Settings and Preferences. On the Preferences screen, we'll need to move down to the section here on the left-hand side that says Account. And once it loads, we'll be able to see that we sign in with the ScanSnap account. So I'll proceed with this at this point, and you would then log in with your ScanSnap account also. I've got my email address and my password set, and I will sign in. It lets us know that the license activation has been performed and our ScanSnap account. So at this point we will click OK. We have logged in with the ScanSnap Home software to our account, and we now need to configure it to connect to our Google Drive account. To do that, we go to Settings, Scan Settings, It'll now load up a second dialog over the screen. And what this second dialog is, it's actually a mirror image of how the display screen on the scanner would look. That's the display screen that we've seen earlier when we were setting it up with the next buttons, so on and so forth, to step through the connection on the actual scanner. What we already have here by default is the ability to scan to a folder on the actual computer that it's connected to at this point. That is not the feature that we're after. That is a default feature that exists and cannot be removed. We need to add a new profile so that we can connect up to our Google Drive account. To do that, we go to the Add Profiles button here that I'm just hovering the mouse over. Once we click on that, it will then launch another screen, which gives us the ability to do just that. We have to select a template, and I must say there is a number that come with the ScanSnap, and the one of interest, if we scroll down on the left-hand side, is upload files to a cloud. So if we select that, it gives us the default settings just to get going. What I'm going to do from the get-go is I'm just going to rename this as Scan to Google Drive. Okay, and if we look further down and skip over the document type detection and the scan settings, which is configured by default for us, we can see that the managing options down here is type of cloud, and cloud service here is just below it, which is blank. If we click on the select button, it'll then bring up a screen where we are able to choose Google Drive as the type of cloud service that we want to upload to. Okay, and we can see that just here, Google Drive. I've selected that in the list, it's gone blue, and now I'll click the select button. At this point, it will actually want us to log into our Google account to authorize that. So it launches up a browser, and in that browser I'm already logged into the Google account that I am using in this demonstration. So it's asking me to choose an account, which I will do so. And many of you might already be familiar with this step from having provided access to Google accounts in the past for other types of things, and most certainly when you set up the DPS within the ACR system, you would have gone through a similar type of process. Here we're just saying that we do give the ScanSnap Cloud permission to access our Google Drive. So I'm going to click Allow at this point. Take whatever time you need to review those options as you go, and we'll push past that for now. So it's told us that that was successful. It just brings up another dialog here, which is really trying to tell us that it's trying to launch the ScanSnap Home software. I'll allow that because I do have that open already anyway. And it drops us back into this process of adding a profile, and we can now see that the cloud service is Google Drive and that it's saving to a folder called ScanSnap. Now, to work with the document processing system, when we scan in documents, we actually want them to land in the auto process directory. So, to make sure that that happens, we need to click on the Browse button just here. That will then essentially open up a dialog which is looking into the folder structure of our Google Drive. You might have a number of folders already in there. What you'll be looking for is the one that's been labeled as DPS. I've got that here. It's described as DPS demo in this video, but once you select it, you can actually double click on it, and once you've got that, you'll see the folders underneath it, and you can certainly see here the auto process directory that I mentioned before. So I'm going to select that so it's highlighted, and I'll click OK. And what that will do is whenever I scan in a document with the scanner, it will then send that file up to the auto process directory in Google Drive. So I'm done at this point, and I'm going to click Add. The software will now add the profile to the scanner so that we've got the ability to put in a piece of paper and press a button that we have now just seen appear in this recording that says scan to Google or scan to Google Drive. So what we see in front of us on the screen here, remember, it's just a mirror image of what appears on the physical scanner. Okay, we can have that selected, put in a piece of paper and press the big blue scan button that we see here that I'm hovering over. Okay. What I'm now going to do is, just by way of demonstration, I do have the physical scanner to my right here. I'm actually going to put in a piece of paper and it's going to scan in and land in the DPS demo directory in my Google Drive under auto process. So I'm going to jump to that now just to show you that at the moment there is nothing there. Okay, and I have this piece of paper physically in my hand now. I'm going to put it in the scanner, and I'm looking at the scanner to my right at the moment, and I'm going to press scan to Google and I'll press the blue scan button, and you'll probably start to hear my device start whirring away in a moment. There it goes. And at this point, it's scanned it in and it's going to be attempting to send it up to the auto process directory. Now, the document that I scanned in just happened to say in big, large print, test document for scanning in the DPS demo video. Whilst I've been talking, we can see that it's landed in the auto process directory just here. And there it is. So at this point, we've now got the software also set up such that whenever we want, we can just put a piece of paper into the scanner, press the blue scan button on it, and it will be able to send it up to the Google Drive directory that we've configured. It doesn't require the computer to be on that we've just done this initial configuration for. It can be completely offline at that point. We've only used it for this initial setup.